Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 4th, 2022 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. Yesterday it snowed and rained most of the day, so the count was not conducted. The weather was much nicer today though. It started out cloudy, but this photo was taken mid-morning when there was a bit of sunshine. And really, even before it started to get sunny, we had a decent flight of turkey vultures pick up. And the winds started out kind of west, southwest, very light, and then eventually shifted around to the north. And when that happened, the flight slowed down quite a bit and got pushed inland. But overall, it was a steady flight for most of the day, but maybe a bit slower in the afternoon. Here we have a sharp-shinned hawk. We can see that the tail feathers all appear to be about the same length. And it also has a full crop, which means it ate recently. And sometimes when they have a full crop, their heads can look a little bit bigger. But overall, it's a small-headed bird. And the wings are also a bit more curvy looking than we usually see on Cooper's hawks. Here we have a perched male American kestrel that was hanging around the park in the morning. Here we have an adult female Northern Harrier, and remember, it's the adult females that have the streaking on the upper breast. Here's an adult red-tailed hawk gliding overhead. The first thing you should look at is the shape. They're just big, bulky beautios. Things like red-shouldered hawks appear a lot slimmer. So you look at this bird, it just looks like it has big wings, pretty big underside, big belly. So the thing that stands out about red tails is just they look strong and bulky and muscular. And of course, we see the classic field marks with the dark patagial bars and the belly band. And this appears to be an adult with the dark trailing edge and the red tail, but under certain lighting conditions like this, that can be hard to tell. Okay, here we have a bird that has already passed us, and if we're trying to identify it, what are we looking at? We would get a sense of the size just from its flapping or the way it moved, that it was a relatively small bird. And we see that it has pointed wingtips, so that means it's probably not an accipiter like a sharp-shinned hawk, but rather a falcon. And we can see a little bit of the facial pattern and also that it appears to be pale underneath. And it has a very skinny tail that's pretty long. So all of those factors combined make this an American kestrel. Here we have a turkey vulture, and like I mentioned, starting maybe around just before 10 a.m. today, we started to get decent-sized groups of vultures coming up and migrating through. And they slowed down a bit in the afternoon, but for a while there, I think we had 1 hour that we had just over 200 turkey vultures. So really a pretty decent flight, and we're still in the peak migration time for turkey vultures. Here is a male wood duck that decided to flip upside down as he went by. Here we have another bird gliding high overhead, and the first thing that stands out on this bird is the translucent crescents near the wingtips. So just seeing that, we know that this is a red-shouldered hawk. And actually, this is a juvenile just because of the underside markings, so a little less distinctive than the adults. Relatively long tails for a buteo. A bit more slender looking than the red-tailed hawks. And also they tend to flap a little bit more than red tails do. When you have red tails that are gliding overhead, they're usually not flapping at all. Whereas red-shouldered hawks, you'll see them occasionally flap, kind of like you might see a Cooper's hawk do. So on the right here, we have an immature bald eagle that flew in. And the bird on the left is the immature light morph rough-legged hawk that has been hanging around the marsh, probably the same one that's been hanging around for the entire season so far. But when the eagle flew in, the rough-leg decided to come up and try to chase it off. So it was actually diving at the eagle. And I just like this photo because it shows the size comparison that rough-legs are actually quite large birds. Not large compared to a bald eagle necessarily, but bigger than most of the other buteos that we see. So talking about aging these birds, so if we look at the rough leg, we see that it does not really have a dark trailing edge to the wing, just a very faint trailing edge. And we also see that it does not have a distinct tail band, it's more of just some diffuse dark color. So those are how you identify the juvenile rough-legged hawks. And for the bald eagle, this is one that's coming up on 2 years old. And so we can see that it still has some longer retained juvenile feathers. And it's starting to get quite worn. And also, second and third year bald eagles are the ones that show the white bellies like this. Here we have another red-tailed hawk gliding overhead, but this one's a juvenile. And juveniles just look a lot lighter overall because they don't have that dark trailing edge to the wing. They just look really pale. You get some light shining through kind of a square area here on the inner primaries. So just a lot lighter looking than the adults and not as bold. And this one also has a very white throat. So just a pale bird overall, but we can still see the faint patagial bars and the belly band. Here we have two bald eagles fighting, and the one on the top is actually that one we just looked at a minute ago that was with the rough-legged hawk. And the one on the right is a juvenile, so a bald eagle that was born last summer. So we can see that it hasn't replaced any feathers yet. The trailing edge of the wing is even and all the feathers are the same length. But since it's almost a year old now, we see that it's quite faded underneath, especially on the belly area. This bird would have started out all dark when it was first born. So this is just from sunlight fading the feathers. Here we have a really nice looking adult red-tailed hawk, and this one I would say is more on the heavily marked end of the spectrum. You can see these nice, bold, dark patagial bars, nice, big, dark belly band, dark trailing edge to the wing, and the red tail. And some of these more heavily marked red tails show a more defined black tip to the tail. And we also see that this bird is missing some feathers. I think this is probably due to damage. When the bird soared, it was actually a pretty big chunk of the wing, so missing maybe a couple feathers there. So probably damage rather than just natural molt. Here we have a juvenile Cooper's hawk, so we can see it's got a large head and kind of a fierce-looking face. On the sharp-shinned hawk, sometimes it looks like a big eye. It gives the face kind of a cuter look. Cooper's hawks just look super fierce with the eye, the placement of the eye, and the way that it combines with the beak. And if we look at the underside markings, this is classic Cooper's hawk, this brown teardrop streaking that's mainly on the upper breast. There's not as much markings as you get down here to the belly area. So when we see this, just this overall pattern of streaking, that's usually a sign of Cooper's hawk. There are some sharp-shinned hawks that can look similar to this, but most of the juvenile sharp-shinned hawks, their markings are a little heavier and it looks almost more like barring rather than the teardrop streaking that we see here. Here we have an adult sharp-shinned hawk, and this is just kind of the classic silhouette. Small head, very squared off tip to the tail, kind of more stocky looking overall. Cooper's hawks the wings look a little longer, a little lankier. On sharp-shins, they look a little more curvy, maybe not quite as lanky looking. So this is just classic sharp-shinned hawk silhouette. Here we have an osprey, and osprey are really distinctive even from a distance, just with that overall black and white pattern to the wings. You're not likely to confuse them with other raptors. Actually, what you're most likely to confuse them with at a distance is maybe something like a herring gull. But if you get a half-decent look at an osprey, they're hard to misidentify. Here we have an adult red-shouldered hawk, which was nice because we're not seeing too many adults at this point in the season. We can see that classic black tail with the thin white stripes, like chalk lines on a blackboard. And the lighting condition wasn't great to really see the orange underside overall, but we can see some of the patterning on the wing, plus the overall shape. Here we have another juvenile Cooper's hawk, and we can see that same teardrop streaking on the upper breast that I was talking about with the other one. So when you see this kind of patterning where you have these markings, but then the whole belly area is plain, that's usually a good sign of a Cooper's hawk. Holding the wings out straight like this, kind of lanky looking, big head, rounded tail. All classic field marks for a Cooper's hawk. And throughout the day today, we had a total of 9 Sandhill Cranes, and here's 5 that were part of a group of 6 that went over towards the end of the day. And remember, Sandhill Cranes usually fly with their necks straight out compared to great blue herons, which usually fly with their neck curved and do an S shape. But occasionally you'll see great blue herons flying with their neck out straight. So it's not a perfect field mark to use, but it's a pretty good one. Okay, if we take a look at eBird, today 54 species. And again, I'll put a link to the checklist if you want to take a look at the totals for the day. And if we look at hawk count for our migrant raptor totals for today, we see we had 631 turkey vultures, 2 ospreys, 9 bald eagles, 10 Northern Harriers, 9 sharp-shinned hawks, 4 Cooper's hawks, 3 red-shouldered hawks, 26 red-tailed hawks, 2 rough-legged hawks, 2 American kestrels, and 2 peregrine falcons for a total of exactly 700. And again, throughout the day, I usually don't check what the total is, so if I knew it was going to be an even number, I might have counted an extra turkey vulture or something, but that's the way it ended up. So we're not rounding, it's just that's what the total ended up being. If we look at the non-raptor highlights, there were a couple of cool things today. There were a total of about 55 white-winged scoters on the bay, including one group of 50. And there were 90 American coots. So I think this is probably the most coots I've ever seen at one time here. It's just really cool to see, especially since they're hanging out pretty close to the boardwalk. And also 3 belted kingfishers that I saw all together at the same time. And if we take a look at the forecast, tomorrow will be mostly cloudy, then partly cloudy, high in the low 50s. Winds are going to start out southeast and then shift to northeast and be moderately strong at 10 to 15 miles per hour. So we might have a little bit of a flight, but I guess the main concern would be that when those winds shift more to be that stronger northeast, that could push the flight inland. And it seems like most of the sun of the day will be in the afternoon with those northeast winds. So I'm not sure if we'll end up staying at the platform or if we'll move into Frisbee Hill. But seems like there might be a bit of a flight, but just those unfavorable winds might keep it from being a huge day. For Wednesday, it'll be cloudy with a chance of a rain shower, high up near 60, and moderate easterly winds, so probably won't be a great day. Thursday, cloudy with some rain showers, high around 50, winds south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, so again, I would expect only light migration. Overall, today ended up being better than I expected that it would be, but it looks like the next few days might be pretty slow overall. If you like this video, please hit the like button and please subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss any of these daily updates from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. This is David Brown. Thanks for watching.